My name is Jesse Thompson, and at 68 years old, I never thought I would walk into a courtroom with shaking hands to face my own son. As I entered, Marcus and his wife Stephanie sat beside their expensive lawyer, exchanging smirks when they saw me. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound I had ever felt. After all the love I had given my only child, here I stood alone, with no one by my side. Before I tell you how everything changed that day, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved with all your heart. I spent most of my life working with my hands. For over 40 years, I owned and operated Thompson Auto Repair, a small garage on Oak Street that kept food on our table and a roof over our heads. It was honest work that made me proud. Every car that left my shop ran better than when it came in, and my customers knew they could trust me. That reputation meant everything. My beautiful wife Laura and I built our life together carefully, saving every penny we could. We were never wealthy, but we were content with what we had. Our little 2-story house on Maple Drive was our castle, filled with memories and love. But 15 years ago, Laura was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Despite fighting with everything she had, I lost her just 8 months later. Her death left me devastated, alone to raise our only child, Marcus, who was 23 at the time. Though he was an adult, Marcus still needed guidance. He was smart as a whip, always had been. When he was growing up, I would find him taking apart radios and clocks just to see how they worked. By 12, he could diagnose simple car problems alongside me in the garage. I knew he had potential far beyond turning wrenches for a living. Laura and I had saved every spare dollar for his college fund. We wanted to give him opportunities we never had. When he got accepted to Westridge University, I remember how Laura cried with pride. She made me promise that no matter what happened, Marcus would get his education. Even after she passed, I kept that promise. I emptied our savings and even took out a second mortgage on the house to pay his tuition. Those years after Laura died, Marcus and I grew closer than ever. On weekends, he would come home from college, and we would go fishing at Walker Lake or work on restoring an old '67 Mustang I had bought as a project for us. Those were good days, filled with easy conversation and comfortable silences. I thought I was raising a son who understood the value of hard work and family. During his senior year of college, Marcus met Stephanie Barnes, a beautiful marketing student from a wealthy Chicago family. The first time he brought her home, I noticed how her eyes scanned our modest living room, lingering on the worn furniture and simple decorations. She was polite but distant, asking few questions about my life or the family photos on the wall. Still, Marcus was clearly smitten, and I wanted to be supportive. When they announced their engagement just 6 months later, I congratulated them and offered to help with the wedding expenses. Stephanie had elaborate plans for a country club ceremony with over 200 guests. The cost was staggering, but I agreed to contribute what I could. I even sold my fishing boat to help give them the wedding of their dreams. After they married, things began to change gradually. Marcus found a job at a marketing firm where Stephanie also worked. They bought a house in an upscale neighborhood across town, one far nicer than they should have been able to afford on their starting salaries. When I asked about it, Marcus vaguely mentioned help from her parents but quickly changed the subject. Our weekly fishing trips became monthly, then quarterly, then rare special occasions. Phone calls grew shorter, with Marcus always seeming in a hurry. Yet whenever they faced financial challenges, I was the first person they called. I helped them with the down payment on their second car, paid for repairs when their roof leaked, and lent them money when Marcus mentioned trouble with credit card debt. I never asked for the money back. They were family, and I still had steady income from the garage. Even in my 60s, I continued working 10-hour days, 6 days a week. My hands grew more arthritic, my back more painful, but I persevered. Part of me took pride in still being able to provide for my son, just as I always had. The wedding was the first clear sign of how things would be. The ceremony was lavish, held at the Lakeside Country Club with no expense spared. I paid for nearly 70% of the costs, depleting what remained of my retirement savings. During the reception, I overheard Stephanie telling her friends that her parents had covered everything, never mentioning my contribution. When I asked Marcus about it later, he just shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad like taking credit. Just let them have this one." As years passed, I saw Marcus less and less. Our phone conversations became predictable, brief updates about their lives, followed by casual mentions of financial stress, ending with requests for temporary help. I never refused. Each time, Marcus promised to pay me back soon. That soon never came. 3 years ago, I had an accident at the garage. A car slipped off the hydraulic lift while I was working underneath. I managed to roll away, avoiding being crushed, but broke my hip and fractured 3 ribs in the process. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive, but at 65, recovery would be slow and painful. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and another month in a rehabilitation facility. During that time, Marcus and Stephanie visited exactly twice. The first visit lasted 20 minutes before they had to leave for dinner reservations. The second time, they stayed a bit longer but spent most of the time on their phones. Each time, they had excuses about work demands and social obligations. My neighbors visited more often than my own son. Eleanor Wilson, the retired schoolteacher from across the street, came almost daily, bringing homemade soup and books to read. Other neighbors took turns driving me to medical appointments after I returned home. The community I had served for decades rallied around me, while my own family remained distant. My house on Maple Drive was not fancy, but it was home. Laura and I had purchased it 42 years ago, a few months before Marcus was born. We had painted every wall ourselves, planted the oak tree in the backyard when Marcus was 5, and celebrated every Christmas morning in the living room with its brick fireplace. Every corner held memories of Laura, from the kitchen where she baked her famous apple pies to the garden she had lovingly tended. The house represented our entire life together. After her death, maintaining it exactly as she had left it became important to me. I kept her clothes in the closet for years, her reading glasses still on the nightstand. Eventually, I donated most of her things, but the house remained largely unchanged, a shrine to our life together. When I finally returned home from rehabilitation, I was surprised to see Marcus and Stephanie waiting on my porch. They had used their spare key to enter and had prepared dinner, the table set with Laura's good china that we only used for special occasions. "Dad, we need to talk about your future," Marcus said as we ate the store-bought lasagna Stephanie had reheated. "What about it?" I asked, taking a small bite. My appetite had decreased during my hospital stay. "This accident proves what we have been worried about," Stephanie interjected, her voice taking on a concerned tone that felt rehearsed. "You live alone in this big house, still working at your age. What if something worse had happened? You could have died alone in that garage." Marcus nodded solemnly. "Dad, we think it might be time for you to consider selling the house and moving into Sunny Pines retirement community. They have medical staff on site, activities, people your own age." The suggestion blindsided me. "Sell the house? This is my home. Your mother and I built our life here." "Mom has been gone for over a decade," Marcus said impatiently. "You need to think about your own safety now." "I am perfectly safe here," I replied. "The accident at the garage could have happened to anyone, at any age. I have no intention of selling this house. I plan to live here until they carry me out feet first." Stephanie exchanged a look with Marcus that I could not quite interpret. "Jesse, be reasonable. This neighborhood has changed. The house needs expensive repairs. The money from selling could support you comfortably at Sunny Pines. The house is paid off," I reminded them, "and I still earn enough from the garage to support myself. Why would I sell my home to go live in some facility?" The pleasant facade cracked then. Marcus slammed his fork down. "Because you are getting old, Dad. You cannot keep pretending you can handle everything yourself forever. What happens when you can no longer work? When you cannot climb the stairs? When you forget to turn off the stove? That is a problem for another day," I said firmly. "For now, I am staying right here." Stephanie's smile tightened. "We are just looking out for your best interests. Are you? Or are you looking out for yourselves?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, born from suspicion that had been growing for months. Marcus stood abruptly, his face flushing with anger. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. I backpedaled, not wanting to start a fight. I just mean that I know what is best for me, and that is staying in my home. The conversation deteriorated quickly after that. As they prepared to leave, Marcus muttered something to Stephanie about me being stubborn and impossible. I pretended not to hear, but the words stung deeply. After they left, I sat in Laura's old rocking chair, trying to understand what had just happened. Something about their insistence felt wrong. They had never shown such concern for my well-being before. Why the sudden interest in my living situation? 2 weeks later, Marcus came alone, ostensibly to check on my recovery. While he was in the bathroom, his phone on the coffee table lit up with a text message notification. I did not mean to read it, but Stephanie's words were visible on the screen. Did he agree to sell yet? We need that money before June. My heart sank. Their concern had nothing to do with my welfare. They wanted the house sold for their own financial gain. When Marcus returned, I did not mention the message, but I watched him more carefully, noting how his eyes surveyed the living room as if assessing its value. You know, Dad, he said casually, real estate in this area has really appreciated. This old place could be worth 4 or 5 times what you and Mom paid for it. Is that so? I kept my voice neutral. Absolutely. My friend Thomas is a real estate agent. He could give you a free assessment, no obligations. His tone was too eager, his smile not reaching his eyes. I will think about it, I lied, knowing I would do no such thing. After he left, I found a business card for Sunny Pines on the kitchen counter. Out of curiosity, I called and inquired about their fees. The monthly cost was more than twice my Social Security check, with additional fees for premium services. Even if I sold my house, the money would not last forever at those rates. The truth was becoming clearer, and it broke my heart. The son I had sacrificed everything for was now viewing me, his aging father, as a financial resource to be tapped. The cold calculation in his eyes was something I had never seen before, or perhaps had chosen not to see. A month after their dinner visit, Marcus left his leather briefcase at my house after stopping by to fix my leaking kitchen faucet, a task that somehow turned into me showing him how to replace a washer while he watched. After he left, I noticed the briefcase sitting by the couch. I called to let him know, but he did not answer. Concerned that he might need its contents for work the next morning, I opened it to look for any urgent documents I could text him about. What I found instead turned my blood cold. Inside was a folder labeled Dad's House. It contained printouts of recent home sales in my neighborhood, a brochure for a real estate company specializing in senior transitions, and most disturbingly, a partially completed power of attorney document with my name on it. There was also a handwritten list titled Retirement Home Options, with Sunny Pines circled in red ink along with the note, cheapest option that still looks good enough for photographs. My hands trembled as I replaced the documents. This was not casual interest or genuine concern. This was a calculated plan. I zipped the briefcase closed and placed it exactly where he had left it, then sat in the darkness of my living room, trying to process this betrayal. Marcus retrieved his briefcase the following day, making no mention of its contents. I said nothing either, afraid of what else I might discover if I confronted him. 3 days later, I was in my backyard, tending to Laura's rose bushes when I heard voices from the open window of my neighbor's kitchen. Eleanor was not home, but Marcus and Stephanie were inside, apparently having stopped by looking for me. Through the window, their conversation floated clearly in the quiet afternoon air. We need to move faster, Stephanie was saying, her voice tense. The loan payment is due in 8 weeks, and they have already threatened foreclosure. I know, Marcus replied. But Dad is being stubborn about the house. He has this ridiculous sentimental attachment to the place. Stephanie scoffed. Sentiment does not pay our bills. That house is worth at least $300,000. If he would just move into a facility like any normal person his age, we could solve all our problems. I am working on it, Marcus assured her. I have been leaving brochures around, mentioning news stories about elderly people having accidents at home, planting the seeds. Seeds grow too slowly, Stephanie said impatiently. What about the other option? Proving he is not competent? My heart nearly stopped at these words. That is trickier, Marcus replied. We would need documentation, medical opinions. He would fight it. He cannot fight it if he is declared incompetent, Stephanie countered. You have said yourself he is getting forgetful. The other day he could not remember your assistant's name. I have met her twice in 3 years, I whispered to myself. Outraged. We could start documenting things, Marcus suggested. Times he forgets appointments, leaves the stove on. Anything like that. Even if we have to exaggerate a bit, Stephanie added. It is for his own good anyway. He should not be living alone at his age. I backed away from the window, nearly tripping over a garden hose. My own son was plotting to have me declared incompetent so they could take control of my house, my money, my life. The pain was unlike anything I had felt since Laura died, a physical ache that made it difficult to breathe. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake remembering Marcus as a little boy, his small hand in mine as we crossed streets. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike, bandaging his scraped knees when he fell. I recalled working double shifts to pay for his braces, his sports equipment, his first car. Had all that love and sacrifice meant nothing? Had I raised a son who could so coldly betray his father? The next morning, I tried one last attempt at honest conversation. I called and asked Marcus to come alone. No Stephanie. When he arrived, looking impatient before I had said a word, I asked him directly if he was having financial problems. Why would you ask that? He replied defensively. Because I am your father, and I want to help if you are in trouble. But I need honesty, Marcus. He hesitated, then shrugged. We have some credit card debt. The economy is tough. Nothing we cannot handle. Is that why you want me to sell the house? To give you money? His face darkened. Is that what you think of me? That this is about money? I am concerned about your safety and well-being. You are pushing 70, Dad. You had a serious accident. You should not be alone in this big house. I wanted to believe him. Some desperate part of me needed to believe that my son still cared about me. But his eyes would not meet mine, and I knew with crushing certainty that he was lying. If you need money, we can discuss it, I said quietly. But this house is my home. I am not selling it, and I am not moving into any facility. You are being selfish and short-sighted, he snapped, dropping the concerned son act entirely. This house is just a building. It makes no sense for you to rattle around in it alone when it could be liquidated to benefit everyone. Benefit everyone? Or just you and Stephanie? He stood abruptly. This conversation is going nowhere. Call me when you are ready to be reasonable. He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the family photos on the wall. One fell, the frame cracking on the hardwood floor. It was a picture from Marcus's high school graduation, his arm around my shoulder, both of us smiling proudly. The symbolism was not lost on me. 2 weeks of silence followed. I left messages that went unreturned. Then, on a Tuesday morning, a knock at my door revealed a courier with an envelope requiring my signature. Inside was a legal notice that chilled me to the bone. Marcus and Stephanie were petitioning the court to have me declared mentally incompetent and to appoint themselves as my legal guardians. The document listed a series of alleged incidents. Forgetting to turn off the stove. Never happened. Failing to recognize family members. Completely fabricated. Driving erratically. I had always been a careful driver. And neglecting to pay bills. All my bills were on auto payment. The final paragraph stated that as my guardians, they would have the authority to make all financial and medical decisions on my behalf, including the liquidation of assets to pay for appropriate care. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. I sat on my porch steps for hours, the papers clutched in my trembling hands. My own child was not just trying to take my house. He was attempting to take away my independence, my dignity, my very autonomy as a human being. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that it left me hollow with grief. With the court date looming, I found myself in an impossible situation. I needed legal representation, but my modest savings would not cover the retainer fees quoted by the first 2 attorneys I contacted. Marcus and Stephanie had hired Caldwell & Associates, one of the most prestigious firms in the county, specialists in elder law and guardianship cases. How could I possibly fight back against such formidable opposition? In desperation, I turned to Eleanor, my retired teacher neighbor who had become a true friend during my recovery. When I showed her the court documents, her normally gentle face hardened with anger. "This is absolutely disgraceful," she declared, adjusting her reading glasses as she examined the papers. "These allegations are outright lies. We need to fight this, Jesse." "With what resources?" I asked helplessly. "They have expensive lawyers. I have a social security check and a small business that barely breaks even these days." Eleanor's determined expression reminded me of Laura when she had set her mind to something. "First, we need evidence that you are perfectly competent. Start documenting everything. Keep a detailed daily journal. Take photographs of yourself performing regular tasks. Get receipts for everything to show you can handle your finances." Following her advice, I began meticulously recording my days. I took photos of myself checking my bank statements online, paying bills, even cooking meals without burning down the house as they had claimed I was prone to do. I asked customers at the garage to write brief statements about their recent interactions with me, confirming my mental clarity and professional competence. Eleanor introduced me to her nephew, Dr. Williams, a geriatric specialist who agreed to perform a comprehensive cognitive assessment. His report stated unequivocally that I showed no signs of cognitive impairment and possessed decision-making capacity well within normal limits for a man of his age and education level. Next, Eleanor reached out to her grandson Anthony, who had recently passed the bar exam. Though he specialized in environmental law, not elder issues, he agreed to represent me for a nominal fee, remembering how I had fixed his car multiple times for free during his college years. Anthony might have lacked experience, but he compensated with thorough research and genuine outrage at my situation. "Unfortunately, Mr. Thompson, what your son and daughter-in-law are attempting is not uncommon," he explained during our first meeting. "There has been an increase in family members seeking guardianship of elderly relatives primarily to gain control of assets. Together, we developed our strategy. We would not only defend against their claims of incompetence but also expose their financial motives." Anthony filed counter-motions requesting full disclosure of Marcus and Stephanie's financial records, arguing their petition was not filed in good faith. We also researched Judge Samuel Jackson, who would be presiding over the case. A stern but fair jurist in his late 50s, he had a reputation for protecting vulnerable seniors while still respecting their autonomy. In several previous cases, he had ruled against family members seeking guardianship when the evidence of incapacity was insufficient. As the hearing date approached, my nights grew increasingly sleepless. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying memories of Marcus growing up. Where had I gone wrong? Had I spoiled him, failed to teach him proper values, or had Stephanie's materialistic influence corrupted him beyond recognition? Whatever the cause, the son I had raised was now a stranger to me, one willing to strip away my dignity for financial gain. Through Anthony's preliminary investigation, we discovered troubling information about Marcus and Stephanie's finances. They were not just dealing with some credit card debt as Marcus had claimed. They had a second mortgage on their house, multiple maxed-out credit cards, and most alarmingly, evidence of substantial gambling debts. Stephanie had apparently been visiting casinos regularly, losing tens of thousands of dollars over the past year. Even more shocking was the discovery that Marcus had lost his marketing job 6 months earlier, a fact he had concealed from me while still borrowing money for supposed home repairs and car troubles. They were not just financially stressed. They were on the verge of bankruptcy, with their house already in pre-foreclosure. The picture became crystal clear. They did not view me as a father needing care, but as a financial lifeboat, with my mortgage-free home representing their salvation from drowning in debt. My heart broke all over again at this realization, not just for myself, but for the moral failure my son had become. The day before the hearing, Anthony, Eleanor, and I gathered in my living room for final preparations. We reviewed our evidence, practiced potential testimony, and tried to anticipate the opposition's strategy. "Remember," Anthony advised, "they will try to provoke you. to make you appear confused or angry. Stay calm, answer questions directly, and defer to me if you feel overwhelmed. Judge Jackson will be watching your demeanor closely. Eleanor squeezed my hand supportively. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Jesse. You have lived an honorable life. Hold your head high tomorrow. That night, alone in the house filled with ghosts of happier times, I took out the photo album Laura had so carefully maintained. I found myself lingering over pictures of Marcus's childhood, searching for clues to the present in his innocent face. Had there been signs I missed? Warning flags I had ignored? In one photo, taken on his 10th birthday, Marcus beamed at the camera, proudly displaying the bicycle I had worked overtime to afford. His thank you note, preserved alongside the photo, read, "To the best dad ever. I hope I grow up to be just like you." Tears blurred my vision. That loving little boy had somehow transformed into a man willing to legally declare his father incompetent for financial gain. Tomorrow, we would face each other across a courtroom, opponents instead of family. Whatever happened, I knew our relationship would never be the same again. With this heavy knowledge weighing on my heart, I finally drifted into a troubled sleep, dreaming of Laura and simpler times when love seemed unconditional and family meant something sacred. The county courthouse was an imposing structure of red brick and granite, its steps already crowded with people when we arrived that morning. Anthony walked beside me, carrying his briefcase, while Eleanor followed a few steps behind. Despite the warm June weather, I felt chilled to the bone. "Remember to stand tall," Anthony murmured as we climbed the steps. "First impressions matter." Inside the designated courtroom, I spotted Marcus and Stephanie immediately. They sat at the plaintiff's table alongside their attorney, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly income. Marcus wore a somber expression that I recognized from Laura's funeral, a practiced look of concern. Stephanie had dressed conservatively in a navy blue dress, her usual flashy jewelry noticeably absent. When our eyes met across the room, Marcus quickly looked away, but not before I caught the smirk he exchanged with Stephanie. That small gesture, more than anything else, confirmed they expected to win easily against their aging, supposedly confused father and his inexperienced attorney. Judge Samuel Jackson entered the courtroom, and everyone rose as instructed by the bailiff. The judge was a tall African-American man with salt and pepper hair and penetrating dark eyes. He moved with deliberate dignity to the bench, arranged his papers, and called the session to order. "We are here in the matter of Thompson versus Thompson, a petition for guardianship," he announced, his deep voice filling the courtroom. "I have reviewed the filings from both parties. Let us proceed with opening statements." The Caldwell attorney rose smoothly. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward but unfortunate case. My clients, Marcus and Stephanie Thompson, have filed this petition out of deep concern for Marcus's father, Jesse Thompson. At 68 years of age, Mr. Thompson Sr. has demonstrated increasing signs of cognitive decline and unsafe behavior. He lives alone, continues to operate dangerous equipment at his auto repair shop despite a serious accident last year, and has shown poor judgment regarding his living situation and finances." The lawyer gestured toward me with practiced sympathy. "No child wishes to take such measures against a parent, Your Honor, but my clients have exhausted all other options in trying to ensure Mr. Thompson receives proper care. They are simply asking the court to allow them to protect a vulnerable senior who can no longer fully protect himself." Anthony took notes furiously, as the opposing counsel continued painting me as a confused old man, stubbornly refusing help from well-meaning family members. When it was his turn to speak, he stood with the nervous energy of someone new to courtroom proceedings but determined to do his best. "Your Honor, the respondent, Jesse Thompson, is of sound mind and body. He continues to successfully operate the business he has owned for over 40 years, maintains his home independently, and manages his finances without difficulty. The petitioners have presented no credible evidence of cognitive impairment, only vague anecdotes and exaggerated concerns." Anthony paused, then continued with growing confidence. "What the petitioners have not disclosed, however, are their own serious financial problems, including gambling debts, foreclosure proceedings on their home, and Mr. Marcus Thompson's unreported job loss. We contend that this guardianship petition is not motivated by concern for Jesse Thompson's welfare, but by the petitioner's desire to gain control of his assets, particularly his fully paid home valued at approximately $300,000. Marcus's face flushed with anger, while Stephanie whispered urgently to their attorney. I kept my expression neutral, though inside I felt a small satisfaction at seeing their true motives exposed. The proceedings continued with the petitioners presenting their case first. Their attorney called Marcus to testify about my supposed decline. My son took the stand and, looking appropriately concerned, began recounting instances of my alleged confusion and dangerous behavior. Last Thanksgiving, Dad forgot he had invited us to dinner, Marcus claimed. When we arrived, he seemed surprised and had prepared no food. This was an outright lie. I had indeed invited them for Thanksgiving, but they had canceled last minute, claiming Stephanie had a migraine. I had donated the food I had prepared to a local shelter. He often leaves the stove on after cooking, Marcus continued. Twice I have had to go to his house and turn it off after he called me confused about a burning smell. Another fabrication. I had always been meticulous about kitchen safety, a habit formed from years of Laura's careful training. After his accident at the garage, his doctors recommended he stop working with heavy machinery, but he ignored their advice. He simply cannot accept his limitations. The actual medical recommendation had been to take 6 weeks off for recovery, which I had done. There had never been any suggestion that I should permanently stop working. Each lie stung worse than the last. This was my son, my own flesh and blood, perjuring himself to have me declared incompetent. I gripped the edge of our table, struggling to maintain my composure as Anthony had advised. Stephanie testified next, her performance even more theatrical. She dabbed at non-existent tears while describing how heartbreaking it was to see me deteriorating. She claimed I had once called her by my late wife's name. I had not, and that I frequently got lost driving in my own neighborhood. Completely false. We just want what is best for him, she concluded, her voice breaking artfully. We love him and cannot bear to see him put himself in danger. Their attorney then presented photographs of my garage, carefully selected to show cluttered areas and potentially dangerous tools. What they did not show was the meticulous organization of my main work areas or the safety protocols I had followed for decades. When it was our turn to present evidence, Anthony started by introducing Dr. Williams's cognitive assessment, which clearly stated I showed no signs of impairment. He then called Eleanor to testify about her regular interactions with me. I see Jesse almost daily, she stated firmly. He is as sharp and capable as men 20 years his junior. He helps many neighbors with car troubles, remembers everyone's names and personal details, and keeps better track of community events than I do. Anthony methodically dismantled the petitioner's claims, presenting bank statements showing my perfect bill payment history, testimony from garage customers about my continued competence, and photographs of my well-maintained home. As our case progressed, I noticed Judge Jackson studying me intently. Several times, he seemed to squint in my direction, as if trying to place me. During Anthony's questioning of my regular doctor, who testified I was in excellent health for my age, the judge interrupted unexpectedly. Mr. Thompson, he addressed me directly. Would you please stand? Surprised, I rose to my feet, unsure what to expect. Judge Jackson leaned forward, frowning slightly. Wait, Jesse Thompson? You are the mechanic on Oak Street? The courtroom fell silent. Yes, Your Honor, I confirmed, my voice steady despite my confusion at this unexpected turn. The one who runs Thompson Auto Repair? Been there since the late 70s? Yes, that is correct. Judge Jackson's stern expression softened slightly. Mr. Thompson, about 30 years ago, when I was a struggling law student, my car broke down on Oak Street. I had no money for repairs, and the final payment for my semester tuition was due the next day. Do you recall that incident? The memory suddenly flooded back. A young man in worn jeans and a university sweatshirt, looking devastated as he stood beside his broken-down Chevrolet. "You had a busted timing belt," I said slowly, "and a wallet full of textbook receipts but no cash." "That is right," the judge nodded, a smile now playing at the corners of his mouth. "You not only fixed my car overnight, charging only for parts, but you also lent you $200 for your tuition," I finished, the details coming back clearly. "You wrote it all down and promised to repay when you could," which I did, with interest. 6 months later, Judge Jackson confirmed, "Mr. Thompson, your kindness helped me stay in law school during a very difficult time. I have never forgotten it." He turned toward the gallery. "For the record, I have observed Mr. Thompson's business from a distance for many years, as I still take my vehicles to his shop. I have noted his continued presence there, working alongside his employees, greeting customers by name, and maintaining the excellent service that has kept his business thriving for decades." Marcus and Stephanie exchanged alarmed glances, while their attorney quickly stood. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this prior relationship might constitute grounds for recusal. Perhaps another judge should hear this case." Judge Jackson fixed the attorney with a stern gaze. "Counselor, my brief interaction with Mr. Thompson 30 years ago does not prevent me from making an impartial judgment based on evidence. However, what it does do is provide me with long-term observational evidence of Mr. Thompson's character and capabilities that happens to contradict your client's claims." The judge called for a 20-minute recess, requesting both attorneys to join him in his chambers. As they filed out, Marcus shot me a venomous look, while Stephanie appeared to be fighting back tears. "These ones genuine. Did you know about this?" I whispered to Anthony when the judge had left. "Not specifically," he admitted, "but I did research Judge Jackson's background and noted he had been a customer at several local businesses, including yours. I hoped he might recognize you, though I never expected such a personal connection." Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. "Sometimes karma works in mysterious ways, Jesse." When court resumed, the atmosphere had shifted palpably. Judge Jackson called for the financial records Anthony had requested, which the opposing counsel had been fighting to keep sealed. Reluctantly, they produced documents revealing the extent of Marcus and Stephanie's financial troubles. The evidence was damning. Credit card statements showed Stephanie had lost over $40,000 at casinos in the past year alone. Bank records confirmed Marcus had been unemployed for months, while still borrowing money from me under false pretenses. Most disturbing was an email exchange between them, discussing how to expedite getting control of my house, with Stephanie writing, "Once we sell it, all our problems are solved. We just need to get him declared incompetent." As the financial evidence mounted, the color drained from Marcus's face. Stephanie stared fixedly at the floor, no longer maintaining her concerned facade. Their attorney appeared increasingly uncomfortable, especially when Judge Jackson questioned whether he had been aware of these financial motives when filing the petition. "Your Honor," he responded carefully, "I was informed this was a genuine concern for Mr. Thompson's welfare. Had I known the full financial circumstances, I might have counseled my clients differently." Judge Jackson nodded grimly. "I appreciate your candor, counselor." At the judge's invitation, Anthony called several more witnesses to testify to my competence and character. 3 of my long-term customers spoke about my continued skill with automobile repair. My accountant confirmed that I managed my business finances with precision. Even my doctor returned to the stand to reiterate that while I had some normal age-related physical limitations, my mental faculties remained sharp. The most powerful testimony came from Eleanor, who described our daily interactions in detail. "Jesse remembers everyone's birthdays in the neighborhood," she explained. "He still volunteers at the community center twice a month, teaching basic car maintenance to teenagers. He reads the newspaper every morning and discusses current events with more insight than many younger people I know." As our case strengthened, I noticed Marcus growing increasingly agitated. He whispered furiously to his attorney, who seemed to be discouraging whatever Marcus was suggesting. Stephanie, meanwhile, had given up entirely on her concerned daughter-in-law act, and now sat with arms crossed, occasionally dabbing at genuine tears. After all witnesses had testified, Judge Jackson asked if I would like to make a statement. Anthony nodded encouragingly, and I rose to address the court. Your Honor, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I have lived in this community for over 40 years. I raised my son in the house he now wants to take from me. I taught him to be honest, to work hard, and to care for others. I paused, looking directly at Marcus. I am deeply disappointed by the path he has chosen. These false claims about my mental capacity are not just hurtful. They are disrespectful to everything I tried to teach him about integrity. I still run my business. I still maintain my home. I still contribute to my community. Yes, I am slower than I once was. Yes, I have aches and pains I did not have at 30. But my mind is clear, and my judgment is sound. I turned back to the judge. I do not need guardians, Your Honor. What I needed was a son who would honor the values his mother and I worked so hard to instill in him. Unfortunately, that appears to be beyond the court's power to grant. The courtroom remained silent as I returned to my seat. Anthony squeezed my shoulder supportively, and Eleanor discreetly passed me a tissue for the tears I had not realized were forming. After a brief final statement from both attorneys, Judge Jackson announced he would deliver his ruling immediately, rather than taking time for deliberation. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony presented, I find no basis whatsoever for declaring Jesse Thompson incompetent or in need of guardianship, he stated firmly. On the contrary, the evidence demonstrates that Mr. Thompson remains fully capable of managing his affairs and making informed decisions about his life and property. Relief flooded through me, but the judge was not finished. Furthermore, he continued, his voice hardening, I find the petitioner's motivations in bringing this action to be highly suspect. The financial evidence suggests this petition was filed not out of concern for Jesse Thompson's welfare, but as an attempt to gain control of his assets to address the petitioner's own financial difficulties. He fixed Marcus and Stephanie with a stern gaze. This court takes a very dim view of using guardianship proceedings as a tool for financial exploitation. The petition is denied in its entirety. Additionally, the petitioners shall be responsible for all court costs and the respondent's legal fees. Marcus shot to his feet. This is completely unfair. You are biased because of some car repair from decades ago. Marcus, his attorney warned, trying to pull him back down. But my son was beyond restraint. He has always been like this, Marcus shouted, gesturing wildly toward me. Always helping strangers more than his own family. Do you know how many times he fixed other people's cars for free while making me pay for my own parts? How many times he gave money to neighbors while telling me I needed to learn financial responsibility? The outburst confirmed everything the financial evidence had suggested about his true character and motives. Judge Jackson rapped his gavel sharply. Sir, you are out of order. Control yourself or I will hold you in contempt. Stephanie was crying openly now. We are going to lose our house, she sobbed. We have nowhere else to go. Please, you have to understand. I felt a complicated mix of emotions watching their desperation. Part of me, the father who had loved this young man from the moment he was born, ached at seeing him reduced to this. Another part, the man who had been betrayed and nearly stripped of his dignity, felt a grim satisfaction at seeing justice served. Judge Jackson was unmoved by their pleas. The financial troubles you face are of your own making. They do not entitle you to appropriate your father's assets through fraudulent legal claims. This court does not reward such behavior. He signed the order dismissing the petition and stood to leave. This matter is concluded. As the judge exited, Marcus turned to me, his face contorted with a mixture of anger and desperation. Are you happy now, Dad? You have ruined us. I stood slowly, meeting my son's gaze with steady calmness. No, Marcus. I did not ruin you. You and Stephanie did that yourselves, with poor choices and dishonesty. I would have helped you if you had simply asked honestly, without trying to declare me incompetent and take everything I have worked for. We did ask, he protested. We asked you to sell the house, to help us. You asked me to give up my home based on lies, I corrected him. That is very different from telling me the truth about your gambling debts and job loss and asking for help as family should. So what now? Stephanie interjected bitterly. You get to keep your precious house while we lose everything? I looked at them both, these two people who had been willing to destroy me to save themselves. Despite everything, one of them was still my son, the little boy I had taught to ride a bike and fish. What happens next is up to you, I said quietly. If you want to have any relationship with me going forward, it begins with honesty and a genuine apology, not more manipulation. Think about that, and call me when you are ready to speak truth. With those words, I turned and walked out of the courtroom, Anthony and Eleanor flanking me protectively. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. The battle had been painful, but necessary, and I had emerged with my dignity and independence intact. Outside on the courthouse steps, Eleanor hugged me tightly. I am so proud of you, Jesse. That took incredible courage. Anthony shook my hand firmly. It was an honor to represent you, Mr. Thompson. Justice was served today. As we walked toward the parking lot, I gazed up at the clear blue sky, thinking of Laura. She would have been heartbroken by Marcus's choices, but I liked to believe she would have approved of how I had stood my ground. The road ahead would not be easy. My relationship with my son was damaged, perhaps irrevocably, but I had survived, and I had done so on my own terms. That, at least, was something to build upon. The drive home from the courthouse was quiet, with Eleanor occasionally squeezing my hand supportively from the passenger seat. Anthony followed in his own car, planning to join us for a celebratory dinner. Though we had won, the victory felt hollow. I had protected my rights and my home, but at what cost? The relationship with my only child lay in ruins. When we arrived at my house, I was surprised to see several of my neighbors standing on the porch with a hand-painted banner reading, "Welcome home, Jesse." They had been following the case through Eleanor and had gathered to show their support. Their warm greetings and heartfelt hugs brought tears to my eyes, a reminder that family can sometimes be those we choose rather than those we are related to by blood. That evening, as friends filled my home with laughter and conversation, I found myself watching from the kitchen doorway, struck by the irony. Marcus had claimed I was isolated and alone, yet here was a house full of people who genuinely cared about my welfare, people who had rallied around me not out of obligation, but out of real affection and respect. The days following the court hearing were difficult. I alternated between anger at the betrayal and grief for the relationship that seemed irreparably damaged. Some mornings I would find myself in Marcus's childhood bedroom, running my fingers over his high school trophies and remembering the proud, affectionate boy he had once been. Other days, I would feel nothing but cold fury at how callously he and Stephanie had been willing to strip me of my autonomy. Eleanor visited daily, sometimes bringing food, other times just sitting with me in companionable silence. Anthony stopped by regularly as well, initially to update me on the legal aftermath, but eventually just to check in and occasionally help with projects around the house. As weeks passed, I poured my energy into revitalizing my garage business. Though I had considered retirement many times over the years, I now embraced the work with renewed purpose. The routine of diagnosing engine problems, the satisfaction of fixing what was broken, provided structure and meaning during this period of emotional turmoil. I also began volunteering more regularly at the community center, teaching basic automotive skills to at-risk teenagers. Sharing knowledge accumulated over decades of work gave me a sense of continuity and purpose. These young people, many from troubled homes themselves, responded to the practical skills I could teach and the respect I showed them. 3 months after the court case, I expanded this program, converting part of my garage into a training space. With Anthony's help, I established a formal apprenticeship program, offering paid training to young people interested in learning the trade. The first 2 apprentices, brothers from a local foster home, showed remarkable aptitude and dedication. Throughout this period, I heard nothing from Marcus or Stephanie. Through the grapevine, I learned they had indeed lost their house to foreclosure and were living in an apartment on the other side of town. Marcus had found a new job at a significantly lower salary, while Stephanie had reportedly started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. I took no pleasure in their difficulties, but I maintained my distance, determined that any reconciliation would need to begin with them. 6 months after the hearing, on a rainy Sunday afternoon, I was surprised by a knock at my door. Opening it, I found Marcus standing alone on the porch, soaked from the rain and looking years older than when I had last seen him. There was no sign of Stephanie. "Can I come in, Dad?" he asked quietly, none of the previous entitlement in his voice. I hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. He entered tentatively, like a stranger rather than someone who had grown up in this house. We sat in the living room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice breaking. "I do not know how to begin apologizing for what we did. It was unforgivable." "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. "Why not just tell me the truth about your financial problems?" He stared at his hands. "Pride, at first. I did not want you to know I had lost my job, that Stephanie had a gambling problem. Then desperation. As the debts mounted, we convinced ourselves that you would be better off in assisted living, that selling the house would help everyone." He looked up, his eyes wet. "But that was just justification. The truth is, we were selfish and desperate and willing to hurt you to save ourselves. There is no excuse for that." The honesty of his answer surprised me. "Where is Stephanie?" "Gone," he replied simply. "She left 2 months ago. Said she could not handle the downgrade in lifestyle. Last I heard, she was staying with her sister in Chicago." I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness for my son's pain mingled with a sense that this separation might be necessary for his growth. "And you, working at Wilson's Marketing downtown. Entry level again, but it is honest work. Living in a small apartment, paying down debts, bit by bit. It will take years, but..." He trailed off, then continued with visible effort. "But I am trying to rebuild my life the right way this time. No shortcuts." We talked for hours that afternoon. Painful, honest conversation unlike any we had shared before. Marcus did not ask for money or help, just the opportunity to begin rebuilding trust. Before leaving, he asked if he might stop by the garage sometime, perhaps help out on weekends the way he had as a teenager. "I would like that," I told him, surprised to find I meant it. The process of reconciliation was neither quick nor easy. I insisted Marcus attend counseling to address the issues that had led to such destructive choices. For my part, I had to examine whether my parenting had contributed to his sense of entitlement and work through my own anger and hurt. Marcus began coming to the garage on Saturdays. At first, just observing quietly, then gradually taking on small tasks. He was rusty, having not worked on cars since his teenage years, but the familiar rhythms soon returned. We spoke little at first, the work providing a safe context for being together without the pressure of constant conversation. 1 year after the court hearing, I made a decision that surprised even me. I offered Marcus a job at the garage, working alongside my teenage apprentices. The salary was modest, far less than he had earned in marketing, but he accepted immediately. "I want to learn the business," he told me earnestly. "Really learn it, from the ground up." Watching him work over the following months, I saw genuine change. The entitled young man who had seen my assets as his solution was gone, replaced by someone willing to work hard and earn his way. He treated the apprentices with respect, shared credit generously, and stayed late without complaint when work needed completion. When I finally felt ready, I shared my long-term plan with him. I would begin gradually stepping back from day-to-day operations, training him to eventually take over the business, not as an entitlement, but as something earned through demonstrated commitment and integrity. The look on his face in that moment, a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and determination, reminded me powerfully of the boy he had once been, before material ambition had corrupted his values. Today, 2 years after that terrible court hearing, our relationship bears little resemblance to what it once was. The unquestioning trust of the past has been replaced by something more cautious but perhaps ultimately stronger. a connection rebuilt deliberately on honesty rather than assumed obligation. Marcus now manages most aspects of the garage, while I focus on mentoring our growing number of apprentices. Last month, we finally resumed work on the '67 Mustang we had abandoned years ago. As we bent together over the engine, carefully reconnecting wires and adjusting timing, I was struck by how life sometimes brings us full circle in unexpected ways. I have learned that love without boundaries is not really love at all, but enabling. True love, particularly for adult children, requires allowing them to face the consequences of their actions while remaining open to genuine change. The hardest challenge was finding the balance between protecting myself and maintaining the possibility of reconciliation. Marcus continues to work on himself, attending therapy and rebuilding his life step by careful step. Stephanie has made no attempt to contact either of us, which seems best for everyone involved. Sometimes loss is necessary for growth, painful as that may be to accept. In the quietness of evening, I often sit on my porch watching the neighborhood children play, reflecting on this journey. The house that Marcus and Stephanie had so desperately wanted to take from me remains my sanctuary, but I now have a clearer understanding of its true value. It is not merely the financial asset they coveted, but the home where I can host Sunday dinners for my apprentices, where Eleanor comes for morning coffee, where memories of Laura live alongside new memories being created each day. The deepest wounds truly do come from those we love most, but when you find the courage to stand up for your own dignity, you create the possibility for more authentic relationships to emerge from the ashes of betrayal. Forgiveness is not forgetting, but rather choosing to build something new with clearer boundaries and expectations. Sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to discover what truly matters. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone close to you? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more of life's hard-earned lessons. Remember, it is never too late to reclaim your dignity and build the life and relationships you truly deserve. Thank you for listening, and until next time, treat each relationship as the precious gift it is, but never at the expense of your own self-respect.